Hi everyone, welcome back to the Brush by Brandy YouTube channel. This week we're working on this piece that's right behind me, and I'm only letting a little peek come through because this is part of a brand new release from Redesign with Prima, and it's actually a collection of designs, and the collection includes 2 different sizes of transfers, a paper, a mold, and a stencil, all that have coordinating designs. And I love when they do this because it means there are different things that you can put together and pair together, and they all complement each other. And that's the case with this one. So it's called the Boho Paisley collection, and I love the colors in it. I love the design. It's right up my alley. I chose to pull some colors out of it for my inspiration for this piece. Came out with a really pretty paint finish, so we're going to work on that too. Of course, adding some molds never hurts. So I think you guys are going to like it. You're going to get to see this brand new collection in action. I'll show you all the pieces for the collection as we go through, and hopefully this piece comes together. It's pretty, right? I knew I wanted a wood stain top on this piece, so I started by applying some stripper. This is from Jasco, and I let it sit for about 15 minutes and then came back with a blade scraper, and I'm just going to scrape off all the goo and reveal some of that beautiful wood underneath. I actually had 3 pieces I did at the same time, which saves a lot of time when you want to strip to go ahead and do multiple pieces. With my top all stripped, I need to pay attention to the body, so I went ahead and removed all the hardware from this one, gave it a really good cleaning, and now I'm going to scuff sand the surface to remove some of the shiny finish. For this job, I'm just using my Surf Prep sander with a 120 grit paper on it, and like I said, I'm doing 3 pieces at the same time, which saves me a lot of time when I just get in and do prep like this. With the scuffing on my pieces all done, I do need to give them a good wipe down to remove all that sanding dust, and then I'm going to give them a coat of Wise Owl primer. I went ahead and primed these because when I cleaned them, they wiped away pretty brown, and I don't want to take the chance that these oils bleed through and discolor my paint over time. I chose Wise Owl primer in light gray. This is one of my favorite primers to use. It's going to be the perfect base for my medium tone paint colors. Let's go ahead and get some paint on this one. I'm choosing kind of an asymmetrical paint design. I'm starting with the color from Wise Owl called Dried Thyme. It's one of my favorite greens to use. I love the slight blue undertones in it. It's beautiful. I chose my colors on this by choosing colors from the transfer that I plan to use on my piece. A transfer can be a great place to find color inspiration when you're a little unsure where to start. I chose this asymmetrical design because I want to feature the transfer design over on the one side of the piece, and I'm going to put some light colors underneath to really set it off, and then it's going to slowly fade into some darker colors. I'm doing a type of a blended finish, but this is more of a moody, stormy type of blend, and so my brush strokes aren't going to be perfectly smooth. I'm going to add a little bit of interest and texture with some swirling and random brush strokes. The next color I'm using is Wise Owl paint, and this color is called Renovation. This is just my base coat on this piece, so it doesn't have to be perfect, but overall I'm just trying to get a feel for what my paint layout is going to be. Next, I'm going to add some dark charcoal gray on the other side of the piece, and this is going to be Weathervane. I went ahead and did 2 coats of my paint in the same pattern, and next I'm going to dry brush on some color called Spanish Olive. This is a green with some really strong yellow undertones, and I did this because I wanted to bring out the yellowy greens that are in my transfer. I'm using a natural bristle brush that I laid off onto the floor, and then I'm just going to lightly dry brush over some of this color, and this also helps with that moody, stormy effect. It's time to start putting on my transfer. This design is called Boho Paisley from Redesign with Prima. It's one of their new designs, and I'm super excited to use it. I'm going to start over on one side of my piece. This comes in 2 sheets, and I'm just going to work one drawer at a time. So I wrap it around the trim on the drawer, and then I'm going to do the large flat section in the center around the trim again, and onto the bottom. Once I've rubbed over the entirety of the transfer, I'm going to come back and start pulling away the clear backing sheet and rubbing over it at the same time. I'm working slowly just to make sure that my transfer stays with my piece and doesn't pull away with that backing sheet. When I remove the clear, you can see it's laid onto my piece perfectly. The next thing I do is I'm going to take a sharp razor knife and I'm just going to trim my transfer at those crevices, and this is going to keep my transfer from tearing on those places where it's got to do a 90-degree corner to remove any of that pressure on the transfer. Check out the full Boho Paisley collection from Redesign with Prima. It comes with a matching stencil, a smaller transfer, and also a mold that all match in this design. So now that my one transfer sheet is laid on, let's go ahead and put the second transfer sheet on. I marked out the design that I wanted to cut out because I want sort of an asymmetrical design. I'm going to save any scrap and use those on a second piece of furniture. And now I'm going to go ahead and again work one drawer at a time and get this transfer finished. With my transfer all laid onto my piece, I did decide that I wanted to sort of tone the colors down a little bit to blend them into my piece a little bit better. So I'm taking a little bit of my color called Restoration, which is a soft beigey brown, and I'm just going to dry brush it over my transfer. You can do this. You can add paint over your transfer. You can add gold leafing. There's a number of different ways that you can make changes to the design of your transfer. So for this, I just took my natural bristle brush again. I laid it off onto my floor. You can also use a paper plate or a rag. And then I took that very thin layer of paint and I just dry brushed it over the top of my transfer. You can see how this just lightened up the colors that were in that transfer, made them look a little bit more vintage and antique, and it blended right into the same colors that I already had in the body of my piece. With my transfer over on one side, this piece just looked a little plain. I needed to add a little bit of interest into the center of it. And so I'm going to do that using some keyhole molds from Redesign with Prima. This is a silicone mold and I'm going to cast mine using amazing casting resin from Alumilite. This is a 2-part casting resin. I'm going to mix together equal parts of A and B, stir them together in my cup. This is just a small design that I want to cast, so I only mix this little tiny cup of resin. I'm actually going to have a little excess, and so I'm going to go ahead and pour some molds that I won't use on this piece, but I'll save them for another piece. Once I've got all my resin poured into my molds, I'm going to use a popsicle stick to find any portions of the mold that the resin didn't get to, and I'm going to even them out. I'll wait about 10 minutes until the resin has turned white, and that's how I know that it's complete, and then I can come back and flex my silicone mold and they're going to pop right out, and I've got some beautiful keyholes that I can add to my piece. I know these are going in the center of my piece where the coloring is dried thyme, and so I'm going to add that same color onto the mold. Next, I'm going to use a little bit of my Titebond Quick and Thick adhesive, and I'm going to apply these to the front of my furniture piece. I want these molds to look authentically part of my piece, and so I'm going to use a little bit of black paint and just darken the inside of the keyhole. The coloring on my mold is a little off from the body of my piece, but that's okay because I'm going to add a little bit of black wax around the edges of them to camouflage it, and they're going to look a little bit dark and aged, like they've gotten some finger wear over time. I start with an artist brush and brush that around the edges of my mold, and then I'm going to use a softer brush and feather that black wax out. Next, I'm going to add a little bit of gold gilding wax over the top of my mold. So you remember the top we stripped down in the beginning of this video? Well, I went ahead and let it dry and then neutralized my stripper using a cleaner, and then I gave it a good sanding to get it nice and smooth. I chose ebony stain for this top. It's going to be a nice, deep, dark, almost black color that's going to match some of the black wax that I used on the front of this piece. I make sure and I stir my stain very well before I use it, especially with some of these dark colors. The colorant can kind of settle at the bottom of the can. I make sure and I wear gloves anytime I'm applying stain, and then I'm just going to use an old rag and I'm going to apply an even coat over the top of this wood. I did end up deciding to use 2 coats of this ebony stain to get the color that I wanted. I used a circular motion just to work the stain into the grain of the wood, and then I'm going to come back and wipe that in the direction of the wood grain. This dark stain really brought out some of the interest that's in this wood grain. It was a really pretty color against the soft colors of the body. With my stain applied, I make sure and let that dry for at least 72 hours, and then I'm ready to come back and apply some clear coat. I'm applying Weisel matte varnish, and I'm going to spray that on using a sprayer. I applied 2 coats of my matte varnish to the front of this piece, and then I went ahead and did 3 coats on the top to get that nice and smooth. You can also brush or sponge on your varnish. I prefer to put it on with a sprayer. It just gives me the nicest, cleanest, even coat possible, but absolutely brush it or sponge it if you feel more comfortable that way. I cleaned up my original hardware and put that back on, and this piece is complete. I love this moody paint finish. Those keyholes on the center really gave balance to the piece. This piece turned out beautiful. What do you guys think? It's time to dress this one all up for some photos, so I went ahead and used some pink flowers just to bring out the pink colors that are in my transfer, some natural wood accents to bring out the vintage look, and also some of those gold tones, and this one is complete. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If so, you can find more Brushed by Brandy on Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, and YouTube, and on my website at brushedbybrandy.com. Please click that subscribe button for weekly tutorials here at Brushed by Brandy on YouTube, and you can find everything I use in the description for this post.